About 7 years ago, I ended up getting invited into this secret pro-life debate group. And it's not secret like a clandestine thing. It was more just like in Facebook terms, it means you can't find the group. You can't search for it. It's like you can have private groups and hidden groups, and this is a secret group. And it got started with the intention of getting pro-life and pro-choice people debating abortion within this group. And so pretty early on in the formation of this group, someone invited me in. And so a couple pro-lifers like me and a lot of pro-choice people. It was kind of a core group of us of about 10 or 20. Most of them were pro-choice, but there was me and a few other pro-lifers. And I saw this as an interesting opportunity to do something that I had never done before at the time, which was to spend more than a couple of hours with a pro-choice person. Because I would do campus outreach all the time, which is great. And I would end up spending, a lot of my conversations will go for a long time. I might talk to someone for an hour or two, which is great. You get more done there. It's a quality over quantity kind of a thing, dialogue. But then I would leave and not see that person again, unless we maybe came back to the campus, year after year, which happened occasionally, but not very often. So it's I would love to be able to track with the same pro-choice people and kind of get a sense of what's working for them, kind of like a social experiment. Watch them react to different kinds of pro-life arguments, different kinds of pro-life people. That's why I got into it. What I didn't realize was that I think that I ended up being changed more than a lot of the people who were in the group. Because it helped do something for me that I didn't realize that I was lacking, but I had been. Being in that group I was there for about a year, and I was averaging 2 hours a day spending time in that group. My boss didn't really know that. I didn't tell him what I was doing, but I just felt like it was really important, and I was able to just pull it off. But it helped me to humanize pro-choice people. I still remember those people. Ronnie and Jessica and Kara and Kira. We got personal. We had a rule every Friday. It was called Free Forum Fridays. You can't talk about abortion at all. You got to talk about everything other than abortion. So we talk about what movies we're watching, what TV shows we're watching. And people got really personal. People were talking about the miscarriages they were experiencing, abuse that they were experiencing with their boyfriend or their spouse or someone. It was an intense group of we created real friendships within that group. And that would end up changing me. And I did get to see the same pro-choice people reacting to different kinds of pro-lifers. There was one pro-life guy that I know that got invited into the group, and eventually he had so annoyed the pro-choice people in there that they kicked him out. But then there was this other guy, Chris, that they loved this guy. He's just this super lovely, humble pro-life person, this pro-life paraplegic that got invited in. And so I was getting to kind of get a sense of what was going on. So it got me stirring, kind of thinking about maybe people are more likely to change their mind over maybe a long period of time with friends that they've grown to trust and respect versus a single conversation on a campus with a stranger like me. And I wanted to start experimenting with that more. Well, luckily, when you want to do something more, God will often answer that prayer. And so I get this random email, or it was a YouTube message. It was a message through YouTube used to have an email system. I don't think it still does. But for a while, there was an inbox if you had a YouTube channel. And I had a YouTube channel, and this pro-choice blogger reached out to me because he had watched some of my videos on bodily rights arguments and liked them. And so she sends me this long message that was basically, hey, I'm pro-choice. Here's an essay of why I'm pro-choice. It was really good. It was really impressive. And she identified at the time as a pro-choice atheist lesbian from Canada. So you wouldn't think that I would have a lot in common with a pro-choice atheist lesbian in Canada, being that she was from Canada. Still like that joke. I one time had a Canadian just about fall out of his chair laughing at the joke. But we did have a lot in common. We both love philosophy. We're both open-minded. We both have kind of similar sense of humor. We like to watch similar things, and we're really interested in the topic of abortion. That's enough to build a friendship on. So I emailed her back, said, I would love to talk. And I could tell, because I could tell she was open-minded, even in that first email, and that's rare. That's where the magic happens. When two open-minded people come together, that's where the magic happens. When it's got one open-minded person and one closed-minded person, you're kind of playing tennis against a brick wall. Like, it might help you get better, but like they're not going to change. And if it's two closed-minded people, they just need to stop. They just like nothing's going to probably go well here. And so I jumped on the opportunity. I emailed her, so I would love to talk. I kind of picked one thing that she had written in her long essay and gave her a few thoughts and invited her to email me back. And we moved to like normal email because the YouTube messaging system was really buggy. And so we moved to real email. 127 emails later, we were friends. And it was really philosophical, really nerdy. But we were talking about abortion, and I was trying to use some of the skills that I've been developing in that Facebook group of being relatable and kind of personal in the way even that I was typing. Text-based conversation makes things kind of hard because you have only the text and maybe like your profile picture if you don't know the person. And so I've kind of developed the skill of writing in such a way that it ends up, once it goes through their filter, sounding kind of like me. But to do that means I've got to write kind of like a caricature of myself. So my written stuff, if you ever read, like if I write Facebook comments, it's a lot louder than I actually am. And there's a lot of emoticons and emojis, and I'm really calm and groundy. But like the reason for that is because I want it, once it goes through their filters, where they might be assuming not very good things about me, it sound like me. So I was doing that in the email exchange, but after 127 emails, we began Skyping. And we would have Skype sessions for like 2 or 3 hours. And that really still helped. Even though I was trying to be relational in the emails, just having face-to-face conversations, as much as you could with computer monitors between you, really did help. And what happened was we were talking less about abortion at that point and more about just the kinds of things that friends talk about. So, I was talking to her about when she moved out of her parents' house. She was walking me through the terrifying journey of starting a nonprofit. She was wanting, how are your wife and kids doing? Like that kind of thing. And I was there to grieve with her when her grandfather died. Her first near family death after having become an atheist. And just kind of process that together. Naturally, we talked about same-sex marriage a lot. And we were still talking about abortion. After a year and a half, Deanna goes through this process of realizing that all of her pro-choice arguments had been beaten soundly. And to her credit, she's too intellectually honest to not ignore that. A lot of people get lazy. A lot of people are like, I don't know what to do with that argument, whatever. It's fine, think about something else. She didn't do that. But she went through 3 weeks of fear of what that meant. Because for Deanna, it was like, what happens to my life if I become pro-life? Because besides me, her entire circle of friends, they're not just pro-choice, they're gay rights activists. Her Facebook timeline is a really colorful place. You follow? That's her world. That's her culture. And so it's like, will I lose all of my friends if I become pro-life? And after 3 weeks of wrestling with that, she got over it. And she decided to go to the National Canadian March for Life, which she did. And she came back home, and she had made she got this blank white shirt. She took a Sharpie to it and wrote a pro-life argument on it. It was pretty similar to the equal rights argument. And then she came home and stood in front of a full-length mirror and took a selfie, or a picture of herself wearing the shirt, and posted it on Facebook. And on that day, Deanna came out of the closet for the second time in her life. This time as a pro-life person. So when we talked about her, I don't like the word conversion here, but I don't know a better word, like her change. And she described for me this 3 weeks that she had gone through. I asked her, so how did you get over it? How did you become pro-life, and how did you get over that hump? And she said, the arguments were really important. She had to understand, the good pro-life arguments. But she said, when it came to getting over the fear, she said, after 3 weeks, what she realized was that even in the worst case scenario, even if all of her friends abandoned her, there'd still be one guy on the other side of the fence welcoming her with open arms. And that was sufficient for her to take that risk and say, I am a pro-life person now, and say that out loud. And so through this, I'm thinking a lot about this process and what was helpful for her, and we ended up, publishing the story, and then the University of Portland invited us to come and do a talk together. So we finally got to meet. We met up at the Portland airport, and we did a talk about our friendship and telling our story and giving some practical tips. And so what I want to do with the rest of my time is I'm going to tell you a few more stories about this concept of what relational apologetics looks like, to kind of put some meat on the bones. And then I'm going to offer you a few arguments for why we ought to do this, and then I'm going to give you 6 practical tips for how to do it. And then we'll have some time for Q&A. But the point is that this is still one of my good friends. We're not talking about abortion as often now. We're talking about a lot of other things, but we're still good friends. I want to tell you about Ronnie. Ronnie is one of the people that I met in that Facebook group. When we started the debate group, she was vigorously pro-choice. Like, she was mocking pro-lifers. She's extremely pro-choice, but we genuinely liked each other, and that helps a lot. So, like, of all the people in that group, Ronnie was one of the three pro-choice people whom I was closest to, and that I believed to be the most likely to maybe become pro-life. She's an amazing reader. She's a good thinker. Her ultimate fantasy is being a Supreme Court justice. That's the kind of person Ronnie is. And I'm going to read you a few quotes from Ronnie that she wrote describing her experience after she became pro-life. Took her longer than Deanna. It took her 5 or 6 years, but she eventually became pro-life. So I want to read you something that she wrote about being in that Facebook group. She said, I had started to call myself on the fence eventually because I came to realize slowly but surely that there were many great pro-life points out there and great pro-life people, even if I didn't realize that my enemies were some of them. There were bad pro-choice arguments, and I'm really glad that the ones who first started pointing these out to me were not the stereotypical hateful pro-lifers and extremists. I don't know what I would have done if they had been. No doubt, I would have been even more resistant to change than I already was. So notice something about that. She's saying, like, she needed to hear that there were bad pro-choice arguments, but she needed to hear that from pro-life people that she what? Liked. That was necessary for her. So eventually I got to meet her. She was still pro-choice at the time, but I was going to be in Wichita, Kansas, hanging out with my friend Steve Wagner and the other people from Justice for All, and she was going to be in the area, and so we got together. We invited her to come over. We hung out in Steve's, dining room for a while, talking, and then eventually I took her and another friend of mine, and we went out to Olive Garden, which is like her favorite restaurant. She almost never gets to go. So we went out to Olive Garden together, and naturally we talked about abortion the whole time, because, as people do. And it was a wonderful experience. And then we just sat around Steve's dining room talking about abortion. Now I want to read you what Ronnie later wrote about this. She said, we all sat in the kitchen/dining room area, and there the real talking began. It was wonderful to be able to be heard. In most online debates, you speak all you want, but your arguments are seldom heard from the opposite side. And if they are, it's mostly so that the opposing side can misconstrue them. For a long time, by that day, I had been mostly asking questions and lurking. Of course, I debate too, but it was mostly on the pages where, again, you weren't really heard. But here these people were, all pro-life, mind you, talking to me, asking me questions. And here's the kicker, actually listening to me. They didn't tell me I was wrong. They didn't call me a murderer. They addressed what I said, asked for clarification, and they let me ask questions, answering every single one that I asked. Now, this was a discussion. Their questions were sometimes difficult to answer, though. And then later, after she kind of came to realize she's not pro-choice anymore, she wrote in Secular Pro-Life, she said, as a woman, I neither need nor want the right to kill humans to be equal as a human being. I am a woman, I am strong, I am capable, I am not inferior, and I don't need the right to kill to be equal. So major transformation in these two people. Let me tell you about two other people. This is not people that were like, I've been the person involved, but two other examples outside of the abortion debate of this relational apologetics being really helpful to people. So one person I want to talk to you about is Megan Phelps Roper. You might recognize her name as being someone who grew up in Westboro Baptist Church. Fred Phelps' granddaughter. Megan Phelps, so like a lot of her siblings are lawyers. They have a lot of people who end up getting law degrees at Westboro Baptist Church to defend their First Amendment cases, their freedom of speech cases. But not Megan. What Megan ended up doing was she ended up being one of their main Twitter people. I didn't know Westboro Baptist Church had Twitter before hearing her story, but they have Twitter. And they're on there and they're intentionally being kind of snarky and, here's where we're going to be and posting their terrible signs and all of that. But she was like their main Twitter person. And naturally, most people on Twitter hate Westboro Baptist Church and would be really, really caustic with her. And she'd be like, whatever, But a few people actually engaged with her and started asking her questions based on her worldviews, asking her questions about like how does this thing, like you've got this thing in the Bible that says love your enemies, but then you say that you want American soldiers to die in war. How do those work together? And she was like, I don't know. And so then she'd go to her mom and be like, Mom, someone on Twitter said, how does this thing where love your enemies works with what we say about funerals, about soldiers' funerals? And she said her mom would always just shrug it off. She wouldn't have good responses. And then Megan would have to go back to Twitter and be like, oh, man, And so people started engaging with her. The same people started engaging with her. And then Westboro Baptist Church, they will publicize, they'll do a press release if they're going to go out and do a protest somewhere. So then some of the people on Twitter would figure out where she's going to be, and they would go to meet her. They would go up right to the line and say, hey, Megan, it's me from Twitter. Kind of they would bring her gifts and stuff like that and have a conversation. So she eventually left Westboro Baptist Church because there were enough contradictions between the Bible and what they were doing that she couldn't, she knew that they couldn't deal with those things, so she left the church and she ended up continuing her friendships with some of those people on Twitter, and she eventually married one of them. Yeah. She married one of the Twitter people, the tweeters, whatever. But I want to tell you about, this is my favorite story. There's this guy named Daryl Davis. Now, some of you have probably heard of Daryl Davis, although you might not recognize his name, but you've probably heard his story. So Daryl Davis is this amazing African-American blues pianist. He used to play with Chuck Berry, the Johnny B. Good guy. He's crazy good. I'm really good at the piano. Most people don't know that, but I turned down a professional music career playing full-time music to do pro-life speaking because there's a lot of great musicians and not a lot of great young pro-life speakers. So I'm good. I'll never be able to do the kind of things that this guy can do when he puts his hands on the piano. It's just art. It's amazing. But that's not why he's famous. He's famous because he befriends KKK members and gets them out of the KKK. So he's got a strategy. So there's a documentary about him on Netflix called Accidental Courtesy, and you should watch it. But he's got this strategy. He has his white female assistant call these guys, cold call them, and invite them to lunch. And these guys, because of their backwards worldview, they just can't imagine a white woman working for a black guy. She never says her boss is white. They just assume it, and he allows them to assume it. And then they show up to lunch. He's like, hey, welcome. Let's have lunch. And some of them leave, and some of them don't. Because he grew up wanting to ask racists this question: how can you hate me when you don't even know me? He always wanted to ask people that question. So he started making friends with KKK members so he could always ask them that question. He would sometimes invite them to come and watch his band play at bars and stuff. And here's the thing. It is hard to remain a racist when you're friends with a black guy and you're watching him play music better than everybody else does. It's a really good strategy. It's brilliant. And so eventually, sometimes his friends leave the KKK and they give Daryl their old robe and hood. He's collected over 50 of them. Here's the point. There are a lot of people in the pro-life movement that see atheists and pro-choice people as non-convertible. If someone from the KKK, including state KKK leaders, by the way, can leave the KKK, and if Megan Phelps, who grew up in Westboro Baptist Church, can leave Westboro can leave Westboro Baptist Church, no one is unconvertible. Anybody can be reached through loving people who are just being Jesus to them. So, I've got two arguments for why we should do relational apologetics. I won't spend a lot of time on it because I kind of feel like the room is with me right now, but here are my arguments. There's a pragmatic one and a principled one, and it's really important to me that you separate these. Pragmatic meaning like a practical argument, and a principled like, it's just good to do this. So I don't want you to mix them up. The pragmatic argument to do this is this. You're going to have a greater impact on the people that you're friends with than the people that you intellectually spar with on Facebook. You just, like if you want to have a big impact, and most people do, especially if you go to conferences like this, you want to have an impact. So that means if you want to have that impact, you're going to have a bigger impact on your friends than the people that you spar with, like on Twitter. That's just true. Like just at an amount of time level. Like the thing that persuaded me in the beginning to do the Facebook group thing was like, look, I might end up getting 100 or 200 hours with these same people. That's 100 times more than I get in the best case scenario on a college campus. Like, this seems like that might make a difference. I think that there are some people who will never become pro-life from only one conversation. I've seen people become pro-life in one conversation. I told you it happens, the equal rights argument, it happens a lot. All of our outreaches, usually App State, 2 days ago, we had someone sign on our poll table, yes, I'm pro-choice, and then have a conversation, and then they're like, I need to switch. They need to switch to it depends. It depends on whether I'm pro-choice. And then they had more conversations like, I can't. I want to fix what I wrote. And so then they like crossed out what they'd written before and was like, I am absolutely pro-life for all reasons. That was just 2 days ago. So that happens. But that's the exception. Most people are not open-minded enough to change their views about something in one day, regardless of how good your arguments are. So as Jim Henderson, who's an amazing Christian former pastor here in Portland, is a friend of mine, he wrote something. He said, when people like each other, the rules change. Really like that. So Deanna would tell you that two things were necessary conditions for Deanna's conversion. Rigorous philosophical arguments and a loving friendship with someone on the other side. Both those things had to be there. Don't hear me say it was just being nice to Deanna that she needed. She needed the really, really good arguments. But it had to be both. And I think that's true for a lot of people. Abby Johnson. Some of you have seen the Unplanned film already about Abby's story. So Abby said something once that relates to this. And she was kind of talking about, looking back on what her life was like at Planned Parenthood. She said, I can't even tell you how sad it makes me when I hear pro-lifers call abortion supporters childish names. I'm continually grateful for the pro-lifers who continued to respect my dignity when I worked inside the abortion industry. They hated what I did, but they continued to love me. They never called me a death escort, murderer, or baby killer. They just called me Abby. They got to know me. They cared about me. And now look where I am today. So that's the pragmatic argument. You will have a greater impact on the people that you're friends with and the people that you spar with on Facebook. Here's the principled argument. It's good in and of itself to love people. It is good in and of itself to love people. So I had to go through a cost-benefit analysis when I became friends with Deanna, because I knew that this was going to take a lot of my time. I was just getting ready to get out of the Facebook group. The Facebook group lasted for about a year, and then it kind of imploded. We let it get too big. There's like an actual, at some point this thing can get too big, and there's 20 great people, and then we kind of let in 70, and a couple of people were the wrong kind of person. It just fell apart. And by that point, I tried to get it started again in a new group, and people were just no longer had the time in their life to keep on doing it, so it kind of just fell away. So now I had some time that I could focus in my email exchange with Deanna. But it's I had a lot at that point I was getting more busy, and it was there's other things I could do, and I had to think, what if Deanna never becomes pro-life? Is this worth, an hour a day or whatever it might be if if Deanna never, changes her mind about this? And in the end, I decided it would be worth it. Because even if Deanna never became pro-life, there would be at least one guy who did his damnedest to be Jesus to her. Really, really imperfectly. Right? But trying. That is good in and of itself. Jason Lebejarvey in England came up with a wonderful definition, kind of a summary of what the meaning of love is. He said, love says that it's good that you exist. And insofar as I am able, I will contribute to your happiness, your existence, your flourishing. Love says that it's good that you exist. And insofar as I am able, I will contribute to your happiness, your existence, your flourishing. So when I say that I love Deanna, that's what I mean. I want her to be happy. I want her to flourish. What flourishing means for Deanna, and we might disagree about that, right? But that's what I want. I love to make her laugh. You know, that's what we mean when we talk about friendship. Wasn't just seeing Deanna as a potential notch on my belt, on my pro-life belt. It's like, regardless of what happens, this is a person worth investing in. It is good to love people. And I had to explain, and this is a hard story for me to tell because I think it really comes across like me trying to virtue signal to you and act like I'm this really good person. But I need you to understand the point, and so I'm just going to tell you the story and ask you to trust that I'm telling you this not to make you think that I'm this awesome person, because I'm really not. But I did have this good moment. So Ronnie, when we were engaging, before she became pro-life, we were Facebook messaging back and forth. One of her friends had indicated to me that she was going through a hard time. But Ronnie wouldn't tell me that. She didn't feel comfortable initiating a conversation with me in particular about her personal stuff. And the reason for that is Ronnie thinks about me a lot differently than I think about me. She was thinking of me at this point as like a celebrity, which there's no pro-life celebrities. It's just no, it's a very small movement. We all know each other, you know. So there's no pro-life celebrities. But she was but that's kind of we could talk about abortion, but we wouldn't talk about it. But I kept on trying to get her to tell me about what's going on with your, I'm not going to get into it, but this stuff. And eventually she was why are you asking me that? I was because I care about you. She's why? I said, because I'm following another guy's lead. Because when Jesus nailed my sins to the cross, I was more different from him than Deanna was for me as a pro-choice atheist lesbian in Canada. So we're following another guy's lead. You're not following my lead if you end up doing this. You're following Jesus' lead if we do this. Because while we were yet sinners, right? That's why we ought to do this. So imagine what would happen if all the pro-life advocates in Portland did this. Portland would change. It wouldn't change right away. This would take time, because relationships take time, and they're messy. But it would also be very rewarding. So let me wrap up by offering you 6 practical tips for how to do this, and then I'll take questions. So do we have volunteers who are going to take, so I see Liberty over here. So if you've got questions, get ready to pass them to the side. I would say, Liberty, go ahead and start. They're not writing them? Okay, what are we doing now? So, Mike?
We're going to practice asking very brief questions.
He's saying that because he wants me to practice giving brief answers.
Yes, set the example for Josh. So I have some if people don't have questions, but I'm sure they will, and then I can just walk around the room. Jeff is going to help me. Jeff is one of our fantastic ones.
Okay, so I'm going to wrap up. It'll take me about probably 5-10 minutes, but I'm going to kind of start my wrap up. Here's 6 quick practical tips. Avoid long public Facebook debates. There's a podcast attached to the Equip for Life course that you get access to if you buy the course. There's 50 episodes in it. And we did 7 of them on social media dialogue. The first 2 parts of that were basically don't. The last 5 were, since you're going to do it anyway, here's 50 tips on how to do it better than otherwise. But there's a lot of, but part of the problem with the long public Facebook debate thing is everyone is aware of how they look, and everyone's trying to look a certain way. They're virtue signaling. And so, you're never very likely to change someone's mind if there's people watching. They have to feel safe. They need to feel emotionally safe to be able to change their mind and feel like they're not going to lose face or, look stupid or something like that. So, Facebook is a great place to find your future pro-choice friend and connect with them one-on-one. Send them a message. Send them an email. Hey, I saw this pro-choice thing you said on Facebook. I thought it was really interesting. I'd love to hear more about that. Could I buy you coffee? That's how you do it. But don't try to do it in this big 200 comment debate and all these people are in. A lot of them are arguing badly and meanly and this is not the right place. Tip number 2, don't think of this as war. Daniel Cohen has this great TED Talk where he said, if argument equals war, then learning equals losing. If argument equals war, then learning equals losing. And any kind of a way that you think about this, if the way that you think about argument leads you to believe that learning equals losing, that's bad. This is not a war. It was not me versus Deanna, or me versus Ronnie, or even Daryl Davis versus a given KKK member. The way that I'm looking at this is like we're on the same team. This is not a debate. There's no points, there's no audience. It's just us. We're on the same team. We're standing shoulder to shoulder, staring at a problem together, trying to figure out what to believe about this. And hopefully by the end of this process, and it might be a long process, but hopefully by the end of it, between the two of us, we cumulatively have more true beliefs and fewer false ones. That's the attitude. Tip number 3, don't think of the other person as your project. This is really hard. This is hard even for me. This is like a spiritual discipline, basically. Because you're going to spend a lot of time with this person, and that means you're going to have to be intentional. So there's a guy, I'm not going to say who he is because we're still in this process, but I've had, I think something, I need to count, I don't know exactly. I want to somewhere between 10 and 15 Starbucks meetings with him on atheism versus Christianity. I've got 5 minutes. We're not going to have time for Q&A.
No, you have 20 minutes.
Oh, 5 minutes before I'm done. Okay, I misunderstood. See, I should have asked a clarification question. Okay. So don't think of the other person as your project, because that's objectifying someone and ignoring the principal reason for doing this. It is intrinsically good to love someone. Another tip, don't just debate those issues. That Freeform Friday thing really helped our debate group. Normal people don't just debate one thing all the time. We're going to have real conversations about what's going on in each other's lives. Christians have this thing sometimes where, if you've got a gay friend, you feel like you're obligated to say something about that every time. Stop. They know. They know what you think. It's okay, and you can just it doesn't mean never talk about it, but you don't have to feel like you've got to unwrap this mystery for them that you're opposed to same-sex marriage. They got that. Understand their view well enough to show them why it's wrong in a way that they can hear and understand. Understand their view so well that you can explain why their view is wrong in a way that they can understand. That's what happened with Megan Phelps Roper. It was people giving biblical arguments against what Westboro Baptist Church does. That's what it took. Even though sometimes those arguments were being given by people who don't believe in the Bible. But they understood this. They understood that it's not enough just to speak truth to someone and just walk away ha, I win, wow. That's not good enough. I get this, I feel really good about what I did today. It's hey, did you change their mind or did you look like a jerk? That matters. Don't be that person, So I want you to understand pro-choice beliefs, the strongest pro-choice arguments so well that you really can understand how to respond to them well. And then lastly, allow the person to remain unconvinced. As my friend Jonathan Fincher says, people change their minds often the way water changes the contours of a rock, slowly. So you're going to have to become okay with having a conversation, a dialogue, and them not being convinced at the end of it. It might take them a year or 2 or 5. That's okay, because we're in this slow process with them. And think also, how long would it take for an atheist to change your mind about Christianity? If someone doesn't say, God's not real, and you're oh, they're right. It takes longer. So let me close with this. My brother Tim wrote a wonderful thing a long time ago where he kind of took the form of 1 Corinthians 13 and changed up the wording for pro-life people. I don't think this is blasphemy or sacrilegious. He's not trying to rewrite scripture or anything like that. He's just trying to take that form of the poetry. So I just want to read this to you, and then we're going to do questions. If I speak with the conviction of a great apologist, but I have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have great powers of perception and understand all science and philosophy, and if I have all faith so as to inspire a congregation, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all excess income to pregnancy care centers and take in unwed mothers, and if I deliver up my reputation for the cause of saving unborn babies, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. It listens and seeks to understand rather than merely waiting for the chance to respond. Love is kind. It treats everyone as a valuable human being made in the image of God, not just embryos, fetuses, and those who agree with us. Oh, did you feel that? Love does not envy or boast. It gives all glory to God and does not seek to be honored by men. Love is not arrogant. It remembers how many times it has made mistakes in reasoning. Love is not rude. It does not dehumanize people by calling them homos or fairies. Love does not insist on its own way. It does not need to have the last word in a debate. Love is not irritable. It is slow to anger and quick to forgive. Love is not resentful. It does not dwell on the failures of those around us. Love does not rejoice at wrongdoing. It is not excited when those who oppose us are caught in sin. Love rejoices with the truth. It does not distort the facts or misconstrue another's arguments. Love bears all things. It does not need to be defensive when insulted. Love believes all things. It does not assume that people have evil intentions just because they disagree. Love hopes all things. It is not cynical, but remembers that God is good and he is in control, and love endures all things. It does not give up on the unborn, no matter how discouraged we feel. Thank you.
Okay, the first question. When someone creates an intense situation, how do I calm it down nicely?
When the other person creates the intense situation?
Yes,
Okay.
like if they bring it up the level. Could somebody else raise their hand who had a question? Okay.
Was it when the other person? Okay, so if the other person creates an intense situation, I'm going to try to de-escalate it. So, like, if they get louder, you get quieter. You lead by example. Go into information gathering mode. Just ask questions. Try to understand why are they getting so upset. A lot of times in the abortion debate, if they're really, really upset, it's because they've had an abortion. Okay? So you need to understand the kind of conversation you might be having. And when someone offers that they've had an abortion, I'm not getting into thought experiments with them. It's a different kind of a conversation. That's why it's a completely different module of our course. It's talking to people who are post-abortive. But generally, I'm going to try to de-escalate things. There is a worst-case scenario where they just won't. They keep on being, they're really nasty. They're calling you names. You've told them to stop. You've drawn some boundaries, and they won't. And then you can end the conversation and be nice about it, be gracious. But you are not obligated to have a conversation with everyone that's willing to have a conversation with you. This is a mistake Christians make a lot. This is a thing that my friend John Lynn said also. Christians have the unfortunate habit of trying to force-feed arguments into people's mouths who don't want them. If they don't want to hear your argument, don't offer the argument. It's not going to be helpful for them right now. In fact, it actually might harm them. It might be better to wait until they're more open and then present that argument. And right now, it's your job to love this person as well as you can, which might just mean listening to them. And I've got a story that I tell about that in the course, but I don't have time, so I'm just going to stop here. Yes?
When conversations get going in time, often they will try and find out more about you and your thoughts and your personal, when really, aren't you trying to draw more them out in their thinking? So how do you balance that?
Oh, that's a great question. Oh, I love that question. It needs to be some of both. So like the danger, if you're good at asking questions, is asking too many in a row. Like you don't want to sound like a prosecutor and like they're on the witness stand. Like it's like, because then it looks like you're just looking for the weakness in their argument so you can exploit it. And so it's like this balancing act, and it kind of basically, it becomes an art form. You kind of learn as you do this a lot what feels kind of natural. And every conversation can be a little bit different. They might be freely offering a lot, and then you're taking that in. Doesn't mean you're going to end up being able to equal all of that. But I want to be able to, I don't want them to feel like they're the only ones showing cards. I'm going to try to make myself vulnerable by showing some of my cards. And some of that, again, is also I'm trying to humanize myself. Just like I'm humanizing them, I want them to humanize me. So having opportunities to talk a little bit about some of my other views or my interests or hobbies or family or whatever like that can help me to do that too. So there's got to be a mix of both for it to be a really healthy dialogue, I think. It's a great question.
You talked about not having lengthy debates on Facebook,
Yeah.
but it sounds like you share some of your opinions on Facebook. And in the last session I went to on lobbying, they showed us the share button and how to share, where people can sign a petition on Facebook. Recently I did that, just shared a petition, and it turned into a debate by everybody else linked to my petition.
Yeah.
And I tried to, just lengthy, heated. both sides, opposite ends, and I tried to just bring it together with love and let's listen, and so
I bet it worked really effectively, didn't
yes.
it?
Actually, there were several people that commented. I appreciate how, but do you share things at all on Facebook then about your opinion? How do you
Yeah, that's a
not
good
have it
question.
turn into that from other people?
No, that's a great question. So I don't share as much on Facebook as I used to. I've been kind of, I'm not deleting my Facebook, but I spend so much less time on there than I used to be fair. And some of that is, I think, like for the sake of my own soul. I don't like the person that I become if I'm constantly wanting people to be paying attention to me or like what I think or whatever. But there's a balancing act because then you also want to, it's complicated. But no, my view is it's good to share on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever. And you should be very choosy about what you share. This is like, there are not, yeah, I'll just say it. There are not that many pro-life websites that I would be like sharing their things on Facebook if I have pro-choice friends. If you have pro-choice friends, that matters. You need to be thinking about how do they interpret it. So if, for example, you read an article that you really agree with, but they're calling people pro-aborts, don't share it. It sounds like a slur. It's really dehumanizing. Our blog is great for sharing if you're pro-choice friends, because we write them with pro-choice people in mind. I'm sure there are other good websites that do that. Secular Pro-Life also has a really good blog. They're really good about that. Secular Pro-Life. They have a lot of really good research-oriented articles. So I'd be very choosy about what I share, and I think you handled it really well when things got nasty. Is you just kind of go in there and try to encourage it to get better, and if nothing else, everyone can see that the reasonable one here is pro-life. And hopefully all the unreasonable people are pro-choice. I'm sure that probably wasn't the case. But like that's the ideal. At least people can see, oh, at least there's one nice pro-lifer.
My question is, number one, thank you for all your teaching. It's really helpful. But I have a friend that won't use the term pro-choice. She uses pro-abortion.
Yeah.
And she also uses the term preborn rather than unborn. So do you find those changes helpful or not helpful? She seems to have
that's
a
a good
pretty
question.
good ministry ministering to people that are on their way into Planned Parenthood. But
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Yeah, it's a great question, and we want to try to use the most helpful language. I don't care too much about the preborn thing. Like, it doesn't bother me too much when pro-lifers use it. I think it sounds kind of weird to non-pro-lifers. Like, no one else is preborn except pro-lifers. And so I think it's just introducing kind of this new term. But I get the argument that it sounds more positive than unborn. A lot of people have this thing like unborn just feels like of the dead or zombies or something like that. Okay. I think it's just a very neutral term, and so I'm fine with it. My goal in the beginning, especially in the beginning of the dialogue, is to use neutral terminology. I don't want it to seem like I'm trying to use rhetoric and language to tip the scales to my side. So I'm not calling it a baby either, because baby, for most people, means valuable young person. Well, that would be question begging if I'm assuming that the unborn has that. I'm trying to make an argument that they're that thing. So I'll just call it, an embryo or a fetus or the unborn or the entity, whatever. It's like, be really clear. I'm not trying to sway you with language. I think pro-abortion is pretty bad. And the reason for that is there's not that many people who are pro-abortion. There are some people who are actually want there to be more abortions. There's 50 of them or something like that. Most people are pro the choice to have an abortion. It's a really good phrase, is pro-abortion choice. But that's hard to say a lot. And so I just end up going a little bit erring on the other side and just say pro-choice, even though I know it's kind of a lame word because we're all pro-choice for all kinds of things. I get that. But basically, by using the term that they prefer, I am showing them that I respect them, that I don't want it to feel like I'm calling them names, and I don't think I'm losing that much by calling them pro-choice. If they call me anti-choice, I'm going to push back. Because it's on the other side, an unreasonable, making us sound like we're these terrible people. I'm not anti all choices. I'm anti this one choice because I think it kills people, okay? So whether you want to call it pro-life or anti-abortion, it's fine. But I just want us to let's have the conversation that matters. Is this thing, does it matter? And do women's bodily autonomy trump the rights of the fetus? That's the conversation that matters. I don't want to spend all my time debating terms and then they leave because I'm no, I'm going to call you what I think you are, pro-abortion. And then they leave and you don't get to change them. And if anything, they're less likely to talk to a pro-lifer in the future. Don't be that person. So I would say pro-choice or pro-abortion choice is the best term to use if you're talking to them. And I think unborn is better than preborn, but it's not going to bother me that much if you use preborn. Thank you very much. God bless you.